Um, let's move it over next to the New York Giants. Speaking of Jason Garrett, who's now the offensive coordinator of the Giants, and I don't really,
Weird.
yeah, I don't understand that hire. More questions for me, right? So you had Saquon Barkley, he got hurt, right? Now my big question about Barkley, and I know you're not theoretically, but philosophically, you're down on wide receivers that are such a big part of the passing game. Because when you have to use your wide receiver or your running back as a wide receiver, then that means you don't have enough wide receivers. But this Giants team is interesting. Moving over to Daniel Jones, 60-something% passer, did fine.
I like Jones.
I like him. I don't love him. It's almost like, you ever have a friend that breaks up with somebody and then they get on with somebody else and they're like, oh, this person's better than the one before, and it's just like,
I'm not going to say he's better than Eli, but I liked what I saw from him.
I think he could be better than Eli. I don't know that's certainly, older Eli. I don't think that's that much of a stretch. But let me look at his. Let me pull up Mr. Jones's numbers here. 62% passing, 3,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. You know what? Now that I read those stats, I got to say, okay, I'm a little bit more in to see the 2-to-1, specifically the 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio there. I like that they got the the one young receiver Shepard. I wish he was a little bit healthier. You got Slayton. Is it right? Hold on, I'm reading through the name. For some reason, I always get Slay and Darius Slayton. I always get Slay and Slayton confused. Slay from Detroit, but the receivers. I think the receiving position is in good shape there. The question is, Saquon Barkley missed a couple games. I'm looking 1,000 yards in 13 games, 4.6 yards per attempt, which is great. 73 targets, 52 receptions, 438 yards, a total of 8 touchdowns. That's kind of he didn't meet the hype coming into the year, especially in fantasy football circles. But now Jason Garrett's getting there. Are they even going to use the guy? That's we just talked about this. Like everything we said about McCarthy in Dallas, we can say about Garrett and the Giants. I don't know what the hell's going to happen there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I don't know. Like the Giants, it was Shermer, everything that he had going on, I like Shermer, but it seems like I'm ready to admit that he's a coordinator and not a head coach, kind of like a Norv Turner mold. Although,
sure.
Did I say, I can't remember if I said to you or somebody else, talking about Norv Turner, everybody says Norv Turner's a career offensive coordinator and that's it. Norv Turner has been a head coach of the Washington Redskins, bad ownership. He's been a head coach of the Oakland Raiders, bad ownership. He took over the back then the San Diego Chargers from Marty Schottenheimer, crazy, super ego-driven GM. Spanos, I don't think they're a bad ownership team. I think they're, they just moved a team. And then maybe Cleveland. I can't remember if he was just offensive coordinator or if he had a little head coaching stint there as well. Not exactly a murderer's row.
Right.
Of organizations, the best one being the Chargers, and I think that's probably the big blemish on his resume because the Chargers are actually in peak form and he kind of, brought them down to level. But Shermer, I think, is okay. Shermer ended up going, where did he end up signing? He's an offensive coordinator with Denver now, which is interesting. All these guys changed around. There's 9 or 11 offensive systems that are going to be completely new this year, Brad. It's like a third of the league. Only 5 new head coaches, but offensive coordinators, 9 of them shifted. So that's what I'm working on right now for the book, is try to figure out what the offenses are going to look like and how they map the personnel. It is, man, because everybody always talks about the head coaching carousel. I'm telling you, ever since I started writing this book, because I do analyze the offenses and the defenses, I think there's a total of 21 coordinator changes if you include offense and defense. And I think it's 12 defensive coordinators and 9 offensive coordinators or something like that. But a third of the year, a third of the league will cycle through new offensive and defensive coordinators respectively every year. It's so much turnover. And you think about that, what kind of impact that has on developing quarterbacks and all that, right? If you just replace an offensive system.
Impact.
Yeah, so this Prescott going from Garrett over to McCarthy, that's a big deal, man. And then Daniel Jones now going from Shermer to Garrett, that's a big deal. So we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't stunt their development too much. But yeah, Giants, man, they need a lot of help. But Daniel Jones, man, I got to say he's better reading through the stats because I watched him. I thought he looked okay, but I always thought that his decision making was bad. But looking back and seeing his interceptions, I got to say, okay, I'm more on board than I was before we started this segment. So there's good stuff. If you're a Giants fan, you're catching this on iTunes, or, on our podcast or on YouTube, comment. Let me know what you think of Daniel Jones. If you like him, if you think he's a bum, and I'm sure at New York they'll have strong opinions.